everyone. Welcome to this episode of Theory Made Easy. I'm your host, Jackie Reyes, and today's topic is the theory of transactional distance. For those of you in the field of distance education, there's no need to shy away from theory these days. I'm going to break it down so that anyone can understand the concepts behind an important theory in distance education, transactional distance theory. First, we'll see what the theory is all about. Next, we'll see where the theory has been, and finally, we'll see where it's headed. So let's get started. Transactional distance theory, as it came to be known in 1980, was the first American theory to define the field in terms of pedagogy. The theory was developed by Michael G. Moore, the founder of the American Journal for Distance Education, and a member of the U.S. Distance Learning Association Hall of Fame. Moore claimed his theory met the needs of teaching and learning that went on outside the traditional classroom. But that's not all. Instead of considering the distance between teachers and learners only in terms of geography, Moore described the distance as a psychological separation influenced by three components: structure, dialogue, and autonomy. Now that you have a little background, let's talk about the components of the theory and how they work together. First, you need to know what transactional distance is. What that means is because of the separation between teachers and learners, there's something lost in the communication process. That something is transactional distance. Now let's take a closer look at the three main components of the theory. First, we have dialogue. Dialogue is the interplay of words, actions, ideas, and any other interactions between teacher and learner. Easy enough? Now, structure is the organized framework of a distance learning course. It describes the extent to which an educational program can accommodate or be responsive to the learner's individual needs. The third component is learner autonomy, which is the extent to which the learner determines the goals, learning experiences, and evaluation decisions of the program. For you visual people, check out the following graphs that show how the components function together. Here's how structure and dialogue determine transactional distance. You can see the more structure we have, the less dialogue there will be. In this event, transactional distance goes up. This tells us that courses which are highly structured have less communication. So there will really be more of a sense of transactional distance in a course with a high level of structure. So how about when there is less structure and more dialogue? The transactional distance lessens. You'll also notice the capacity for individualization here. And I'm sure you can tell the more a learner feels like an individual, the less he or she will sense a transactional distance. Now let's try to understand how autonomy works with this idea of transactional distance. This graph shows us that when transactional distance increases, a higher level of autonomy is required of the learner. Okay, let's continue by exploring what scholars have said about the theory. Some have supported the theory as a guiding theory for the field, while others have been more critical. Arguably the most noted critics of the theory are Gorski and Caspi, who analyzed research related to the theory published over the course of 8 years. They identified 3 reasons to explain the importance of testing and exploring transactional distance theory. The first was that researchers saw the theory as a framework for analyzing systems of distance education. The second reason was that researchers had cited the need for a reduction in transactional distance. And finally, they reasoned the theory was already being taught in higher education courses. Now that we know this theory has some importance in the field, I'm sure you're anxious to know how other scholars perceive the theory. Here are some perceptions worth noting. Early support for the theory came from Keegan, who founded the journal Distance Education, and Rumble, a specialist in the administration of institutions of distance education. Keegan cited Moore's theory as a defining concept of distance education, while Rumble promoted the use of the phrase transactional distance. Tate, the Dean of Education at the United Kingdom Open University, claimed this theory still remained valid in 2003 and upheld its use as a tool to evaluate distance education programs. Additionally, Saba, widely known for his research in the expansion of the theory, argued that a precise understanding of transactional distance was necessary for the field to grow into the future. And the theory he cited to aid in that understanding was none other than Moore's. The most recent support for transactional distance theory came from Peters, a pioneer of distance education. He defended Moore's theory, saying it related to all aspects of distance education. He also argued that the theory was a prescriptive one, with the ability to advance the work of those involved in the field. While these scholars are but a few of the supporters of transactional distance theory, we can't discard those who are a bit more critical. One of these critics is Garrison, a professor at the University of Calgary. In his discussion of the shift from structural to transactional issues in distance education, he argued against the theory, claiming new theories needed to be constructed in order to meet the challenges of post-industrial distance education. Remember our friends Gorski and Caspi? Well, they also found fault with Moore's theory after their review of 6 studies that tested the components of transactional distance theory. Overall, Gorski and Caspi claim researchers were not using operational definitions for the theory's concepts because Moore didn't develop them. That certainly causes some confusion. The authors also concluded that transactional distance theory could be interpreted as a tautology, which basically means it could be regarded as a needless repetition of an idea. That's not all. They claim structure, dialogue, and autonomy were hierarchical, in which one variable determined the extent of the other. If you'll recall our graph, that's not how these components were shown to work together, so this poses a problem as well. Ultimately, Gorski and Caspi claimed transactional distance theory was not a valid scientific theory, but merely a prescriptive philosophical approach. Well, I'm sure you can conclude that there is more to be done with transactional distance theory. So in this last segment, I'd like to discuss where scholars think the theory is headed. While some saw the theory could be adapted to the future challenges of distance education and have even offered up their own models based on principles of the theory, others have argued for a more comprehensive theory, claiming transactional distance theory may not be applicable to distance education programs today. What this all comes down to is that there still is an interest out there in transactional distance theory. Whether it can be accepted, modified, or even expanded remains to be seen. So, there you have it, folks. I sure hope you've learned a little bit about transactional distance theory, or at least enough to intelligently join in the conversation at your next cocktail party. I'm your host, Jackie Reyes, signing off. See you next time.